Hello and welcome to another Britain's Best B Roads. My name is Colin. If you're just tuning in for the first time, this channel is meant to be about me driving across the best roads in Britain and sharing those road trips with you. Coronavirus lockdown has put paid to that for now. Hopefully I'll get back to it sometime soon. So I thought I would continue to share with you some of the work I've been doing on the cars, and in this video I'll share some of the progress I've made on the Mark 1 Toyota MR2 or the AW11, SW10, whatever you want to call it. She goes away tomorrow for the welding work that needs done. So if you'll recall from earlier videos, there's a fairly sizable hole in the front passenger footwell, and the jacking point around that same area has pushed up into the floor, so the metal in that corner is obviously quite rusted and soft. But it makes sense, all of the jacking points are a little bit crumbly, a little bit soft. It's 33 years old, so that's to be expected. So what I'm going to do is do the job properly, or have the job done properly. I'm not doing it, I'm not a welder. And cut out the rails along both sides, front to back, and weld in new metal, and some strengthening beams as well are going to get put in. Also, the bottom of the driver's front wing has definitely seen better days, so we'll see if we can save that by cutting out and put some new metal in there too. And if we can't, we might need a new wing, but we'll see how we go with that. So she goes away tomorrow to get that welding done, and so I've been busy. We've done some work on the brakes, some work on the radiator bay, and the fan shrouds were pretty rusted, so we'll fix that as well. A little bit of work in the bodywork, not finished yet. So I'll share with you what I've done so far. Hope you enjoy. Something I've noticed when the car's been sitting idling, because I haven't driven it anywhere, just been sitting idling, is that the radiator fans haven't been kicking in. There's two on this car, one for the radiator, one for the air conditioning. Neither of them have been kicking in. I don't know whether that's just because it's been quite cold here and so it hasn't got hot enough for the radiator fans to need to kick in, or whether there's a problem. Now, the simplest way to check if there's a problem is to take out the temperature sensor from the radiator. That's the thing that tells the fans to kick in. Well, actually the way it works is the fans are always on, and the temperature sensor stops them from going on. So usually if the temperature sensor fails, it would mean the fans would be on all the time rather than not coming on. So I suspect there maybe is a problem. But this is the fastest way to check. Take out the temperature sensor and see if the fans come on. So let's do that. Temperature sensor is down here. You see I've just already pulled it out. A bit tricky to get light in here. I need an extra pair of hands. It's that cable there. See it waggling about. Just above, you see it loose now. See that little blue end? That's where it goes in, and it's that one above the hose that I've disconnected. So if I start the car now, this fan, so there's two fans, so the one on the left as we look down on it should come on. Let's go see if that happens. It does. Okay, so that's good, so it must just mean the car not getting up to full temperature. But as you can see, those cowlings for the fans are pretty horribly rusty and just mucky and dirty. So I think what I'm going to do is take them off and give them a good clean anyway, put it back in. There we go, that is the shroud now removed. You see these top brackets, these guys here, got quite a lot of surface rust on them. They're sound, but I'll take them off and then clean them as well. And actually, if you look at where the shroud was sitting on, and just generally round about the radiator, is looking pretty rusty in there as well. So I'm just going to take the radiator out. and give that all a good clean up round about there, but not today because I'm pretty tired. The reason being, see the shroud over here, there's only 6 bolts on that shroud, 2 at the top, 1, 2, 3, 4 at the bottom. That should take 4 minutes probably to remove, but this is the joy of old cars, particularly there's a bit of rust. That took about 2.5 hours to get that out. I don't know if these are standard or whether they're meant to be bolts on them, but you can see there it's a screw head holding them in. So this is one that was on the top which hadn't rusted, that came off fine, and you can get the 10mm spanner at the back quite easily, good access, fine, so they come off fine. Every one of the 4 on the bottom was rusted solid. The screw heads on them, again this is one of the good ones, but the screw head on it just got completely mangled, and I ended up using every tool in the garage, pretty much. I think the only one I didn't use was the polisher to get these things out. Drilled them, angle grinder, wrenches that were smaller, everything to try and get them out. I eventually just persisted with the angle grinder to completely cut the screw head off, because underneath the screw head was a 10mm, which I managed to get them off. So yeah, what I thought was just going to be a quick job, get that shroud off and get it cleaned up, turned out to be 2.5 hours just getting the bolts off. Now the shroud, I'm glad I got the shroud out because it is in a bit of a mess. When all that stuff there is just going to crumble away. You can see some of it already is. There's it crumbling. You can probably hear it. This is all come away. It's all split and rusted. There's no corner here at all. That's yeah, more of it disappearing as we speak. But I think it's worth trying. Or maybe not. The more I poke about in it, the more big holes I'm making. Thing is, the fans are working fine, as we established earlier, which is good. I don't know. Let me give this a good soak. I'll scrub it down. The mounting brackets, the mounting points are all pretty solid. So that's the main thing, and the mountings for the fans themselves are all pretty solid. So that's the main thing. The rest of it, doesn't have to be metal. The replacement ones you get for these tend to be plastic anyway. So I could fiberglass in a lot of these holes and things, which I think is probably what I'll do, as I say. As long as all the mounting points are strong, which they are, then the rest of it could as well just be plastic. So I'll try and fix it. We'll give it a good soak with some degreaser and take it from there. Radiator is out. That bottom hose was a pig to get off, but we got it. Over on this side, most of the tray that the radiator sits on is okay, surface rust, a lot of bits of edges disappeared. Over on this side here, you can see there's been a patch put in there before. You see the weld here, and down here, more rust. So what we'll do is we'll get that all brushed down, get all the surface rust off. Have a good poke about and see what's just surface rust, and if there's any structural rust. That corner's definitely not too good. That's the bay all sanded down and coated with rust prevention. You can see, well, I won't look upside down here, but you can see there's been a metal plate put in there previously and welded in the bumper, which is good. It's good to see that that's been done in the past. So that's the radiator bay, all patched up, rust treated and hammerite painted as well. I should probably have shown you this before I put the radiator back in, that would have made more sense. As you can see, all black hammerite painted there, all the brackets redone. You can see in here the ledge that it sits on, still a little bit rough, it's not perfect, but it'll certainly stop the rust coming through for a wee while, which is good. Hoses looked okay, so I've kept them, but I've put new Jubilee clips on them, stop them rusting through. So we'll get the fan in at the back there and get it all connected back up. That's the fans back in and all reattached with lovely shiny new 10mm bolts and washers, and not those stupid rusted screws that were in it before. So if this ever needs to come off again, hopefully the person will not have to use as many swear words as I did. I noticed when I was filling the cooling system back up yesterday and bleeding it through, that it wasn't filling up from the expansion tank, so I was having to put the water directly in here. This is a vacuum system. What's meant to happen is as the water gets low in the actual system itself, it should suck it back out of here. But the cap that's on the tank here is completely cracked. There's actually a hole in the top of it. So this is not working as a vacuum system at all, so I need to get a new cap for that. And while I'm at it, we'll just, as you can see, that's it. It sucks the water back up out there and back into the system. And then as the system cools back down again, some water will go back into the expansion tank. That's why the level in the expansion tank goes up and down. But it's not working, so we'll need to get a new cap. And while I'm switching all these hoses over, because the new cap will just come as the cap, it won't come with the hoses. So as I take these off, I will flush these through as well to make sure there's no blockages in them. Parts delivery, like Christmas. So we've got in here, we've got the new cap for the expansion tank bottle. I thought it was just the cap, but it's the whole assembly with the hoses. So that's very reasonable, it's about £20. So we'll get that fitted, good. And there is a distributor gasket, brake hoses. These are braided stainless steel. Did I go for the stainless steel ones? Yeah, stainless steel. PTFE inner, stainless steel overbraid. Front and back, we'll get them on. I'm replacing the brakes, which we have here. Discs or rotors for the front and the back. And pads, magic pads there. New distributor cap. And a new rotor for the distributor as well. I'm replacing everything else. I'm having to get new leads too, so I thought may as well just get a new distributor cap and rotor while we're at it. So let's put all this on. There's the old distributor cap out the car. So the way the distributor works, the distributor turns the rotor arm, which we'll replace in a wee minute, And as that rotor touches the contact points, and this there are 4 cylinders, so 4 contact points, as it touches the contact points, it sends the electric current through the lead, and that makes the spark plug spark. You can see the new one here, and these posts where the rotor arm will turn and touch the post. That's how much of a post there should be. And obviously over time, as that rotor arm rotates and touches the post, it wears down both the rotor arm and the post. And you can see here, we've got, it's a pretty good post on cylinder 1. And a pretty good post on cylinder 4. But cylinders 2 and 3 are completely worn away. Completely worn away to the plastic of the cap. So I wonder they've been firing at all. So this should make a big difference to how clean the engine runs and how much power we get. Okay, that all looks nice and clean and pretty. New Magnecore racing leads, new distributor cap, new distributor seal, rotor. Now, let's cross our fingers and make sure I've put everything back in the right way. So far so good. It's always idles high when they start. It's just a trait of the Mark 1 MR2. Once the engine gets up to temperature, the revs start to fall back down and it idles at 850. That's where it should sit. Sounds good. So around this side you can see new discs, pads, lead nipples. Unfortunately on this side, the union between the hard brake line and the flexi rubber hose has just rounded. That screw has rounded, and that sits as part of the hard brake line. I could have got it off probably by putting locking mole grips on it and just wrenching it off that way. But there's a risk, the connection here could actually now be more solid than the actual pipe itself, and so the thing that would give might not be the screw connector, it might be the actual hardline brake pipe that could twist or snap, which would not be good. Or even if it did unscrew, there's a risk that I wouldn't be able to screw it back into the new hose and get a good tight seal on it, which would mean a new screw would need to go in here, and I think that would probably mean a whole new brake line, which I really don't want to do. And given that this it's not leaking, it's not split, yes, I would like to replace it with the fairly expensive one that I bought, but if I can replace 3 out the 4 at this point, and then maybe in the future we can look at replacing this one when I'm doing the brake lines anyway, I think that makes more sense than trying to force this and knackering it and then having potentially get it towed. So while I'm in on this side replacing the discs and pads and bleed nipples and all that sort of stuff, I thought may as well bleed the clutch while I'm here, because you can reach it from under here. You can see the bleed nipple just up there for it. And you can, hopefully you can see the colour of the fluid that's coming out the hose now is a lot better than what's in the little bottle that gathers the old stuff. So that's it cleared through. The clutch felt okay, wasn't that bad, but I could see from the reservoir that the colour of the fluid that was in there was pretty black. Wait till later once the compressor's gone off. Okay, now the compressor is off, behaving itself. I can show you, look at the colour of that brake fluid. So that's a combination of brake fluid from the back two calipers and the fluid out the clutch. It's black, isn't it? My goodness. Not like the lovely golden syrup that is now coursing through the clutch, and at least the back calipers will bleed the front ones when I'm doing them. I'm starting to reassemble the front brake caliper as we're replacing the disc and the pad. Now, as I'm going across the whole car, if I come across a screw or a bolt that is a bit rounded or rusty, difficult to get off, I'm replacing it. So as you can see, this one here had completely rounded. That's meant to be a 17mm. To get it off, I had to smash on a 16mm spanner to break it and get it to turn. So I'm replacing that because these brake calipers and the slides, they need to be torqued up to a pretty high torque. Now if your bolt is rounded, you're probably not going to be able to get that to the torque setting that it needs to be. And if it's not tight enough, then there is the chance that it could start to unwind itself and fall out. And then all of the strain of braking, of all the weight of the car on that caliper, when it brakes, all the momentum goes forward, is all going to be on one bolt, the one that is, you have been able to torque properly. But one bolt on its own will not be able to take the stress, and that will then break off. And I say that from experience because I did have a situation once where exactly that thing happened. An old bolt that wasn't even as bad as that one, and I couldn't get it torqued to quite the setting that it should have been, but close enough I thought, and that's exactly what happened. It fell out, put all the strain on the bolt, the good bolt, but it couldn't take the strain, and it also either came out or sheared, and the caliper came off, it caught inside the alloy wheel and just mangled everything. We're actually very lucky not to have been in a fairly major accident. So this guy here is getting replaced with a brand new shiny 17mm, and that'll go on instead. So he goes there. Now, if you think that's daft, I mean that only cost, I think it was £3 or £4 for one bolt. If you think I'm being overly prudent and you don't want to go about replacing bolts on your car, fine, whatever. But one that you absolutely should do is that guy there. The bleed nipple or the bleeder screw, whatever you want to call it, on the caliper. Now anytime you're changing your brake pads or your fluid, anytime you're in here at all, you should change that bleeder screw because it rusts. So it's made of a different metal from the caliper, so it rusts, it gets stuck in there, and if you've got an old one, it can be a complete pain to get out. In fact, it can be more than a pain to get out. If you can't get it out, what will happen is it will shear off because you'll be able to put more force on that than it can withstand, and it will shear off. And there are some ways of trying to get the bit that's broken out, but you won't always be successful. And if that's the case, you can't get what's left of the bleeder screw out of the caliper, you're going to need a new caliper. So for the sake of something that costs probably less than £2, you should just replace it, treat it like a consumable. And if you're not doing the work yourself, if the car's going into the garage to get anything done, new pads, system bled, whatever, ask them to change the bleeder screws, the bleed nipples, because they won't all do it as a matter of course. And on this car, every single one of them put up a fight. The front two in particular had to be heated and cooled and heated and cooled and heated and cooled. Each one took me about 30 minutes to get out. Whereas if they had just been replaced, the last time, whenever the brake pads were done, I wouldn't have had that problem. I don't know if you can see that, it's not really showing it very well on the camera. And you see how rounded that got. There's not a single edge on it. It's got a lot of good YouTube videos on how to get these out if they are rounded. Short version is you put a bit of wire or a nail into the hole in the top. That helps to stop it from collapsing when you put the grips on it. And you heat it and cool it and heat it and cool it and heat it and cool it, and you just do that over and over again. Get the locking grips on it. You know, these are the bigger ones. And just be patient, don't rush it, otherwise you will tear it, and then that makes the job 10 times harder. So replace rounded bolts as you go. If you think that's overly prudent, then please at the very least you should do it with these bleeder screws. It will save you a lot of money and heartache in the future. That's this corner all bled. Before I put the wheel back on, what I do is I mark the bolts to make sure that they're not moving. So what I'll do is after I've driven the car about for a little while, in a week or so, I'll bleed all the system again, just to make sure I've got all the air bubbles out it. And when I do that, I can check all the bolts that I've taken out and put back to make sure that none of them are starting to slip and unscrew themselves, which happens every time can happen, particularly around the brakes and suspension components when there's stress and pressure on them. So foolproof method, very inexpensive, Tipex or something similar. And all you do is just mark on the bolt itself and mark on wherever the bolt's going into to make sure that you've got a line. If that bolt starts to move and unwind itself, then you'll be able to spot if it has moved. And I've done that just on, you know, on everything, even on the hoses where they connect into hard lines, on the slider bolt. See it there. It's not easy to see, but I've done it the bolt under there as well. So every bolt I've taken off and put back in, all the unions, all that kind of stuff. Just put little alignment marks on them to make sure that I can test if they're moving or not. So that's it, off for welding tomorrow, and then when she comes back, we will get the alloys refurbished, put the new tyres on, which are up there in the rack, and then we will finish off the bodywork, get that painted. Not sure whether to have a go at doing the painting myself, I've done it in the past, or whether to get somebody else to do it. Don't know, haven't made up my mind about that yet. Obviously we'll get the carpets and seats back into the car, we'll get the body kit back on once it's painted, and then we'll do the timing belt. And when I'm doing the timing belt, I'm going to replace the water pump as well and the auxiliary belts, so we'll get all that done. That'll be a fun task. But at that stage I should be able to drive her about and see actually how she performs on the road, because I haven't driven this car more than probably 4 or 5 miles in total. So we'll get her out the road, see how she feels, and then we can decide what we're going to do from a suspension point of view. Are there any of the ball joints that feel a little bit worn? The shocks and springs need replaced. We'll decide that after we've had a chance to actually drive the car for a little bit. So that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Next video, well, as I say, we'll probably be reporting back on the welding, the bodywork, painting, timing belt, etc., and moving it on so that the car is ready for some road trips when lockdown is hopefully lifted a little bit. Thank you very much for watching. Please like if you have, please subscribe, and see you next time. Stay safe. Bye bye.